Hey everyone, this is Shehan Jeyarajah from Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and I'm here now to recap Week 15 of the college football season, coming to you live, by the way, from the beautiful Courtyard Marriott in Waco, Texas. And let's go ahead, okay, but there's a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and quickly start on Friday night. North Texas 45, UTEP 43. I think a game that both these teams should leave feeling pretty good about. So the story of the day, Jalen Darden, huge game for them, 8 catches, 173 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And by the way, after that game, Jalen Darden is now the leading receiver in receiving yards and touchdowns and receptions. So congratulations to Jalen Darden, one of the best to do it in the state of Texas over a great many years, really. But, I think that we just saw in this game how much better the offense looks with Austin Aune under center. I mean, it's just noticeable, right? It's just different. The defense has to play you differently. Jalen Darden was able to really explode after Jason Bean got pulled. And I mean, I think that Austin Aune just has to be your guy heading forward, and for UTEP, I think that they should feel pretty encouraged from this game. On defense, they had lost 4 defensive backs to the transfer portal before this game. And, so they were playing down a little bit. And I think that they competed pretty well overall on the defensive side of the ball. And offensively, they were without their starting quarterback, Gavin Hardison, so they had to play Calvin Brownholt, who was really a guy who was brought onto the roster to be more of a change of pace running quarterback than he ever was to be a passer. And I thought that he still played pretty well overall. Now, he had 4 interceptions, and 3 of them especially were just horrific. Just horrible decisions. But, there were a lot of other passes that he threw that I thought should have been caught. I thought that he had a lot of drops in that game, that weren't his fault. And so I thought that he played it pretty well overall. So I think that if you're UTEP, you still leave this game feeling pretty good. But, North Texas, obviously the questions are going to come on the defensive side of the ball. They might play one more game, but this might be it for them as well. So a lot of questions, I think, for both of them heading into the offseason, but I think a game that both of them can feel pretty good about. And let's move on. Rice versus UAB. Rice ends up falling 21-16. And actually, I mean, Rice should have won this football game. Rice was the better team in this game, in my opinion. And Giovanni Johnson played really well at quarterback, but he got hurt while Rice was down. He was kind of leading a late game charge, and unfortunately, Wiley Green has come to the game, only completes 2 of 10 passes, including an interception, and that's kind of it, right? That's kind of the end of it. And so I think that Rice, though, through these last 2 games especially, really showed what they need to be and what they're going to be in a very short while, right? Like, they managed to move the ball pretty effectively. No real big plays, no real explosiveness, but just consistency, just rock hard consistency. And Jordan Myers, the tight end, had a great game for them as well. UAB, they obviously did what they do. Tyler Johnson had a good game for them. But I thought that Rice's defense did a really good job against UAB overall and gave them a real chance to win. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen, so UTSA will not be playing in the Conference USA title game because Rice had to beat UAB for that to happen. So too bad. I think that hopefully UTSA gets to play in a bowl game and a good bowl game. I mean, they deserve it after this season. But a lot of proof of concept there for Rice, who obviously we had Mike Bloomgren on the podcast on Wednesday to talk about his big win last week. So I think that they should feel pretty good about where they're at. Moving on, Memphis versus Houston. So Houston goes down 27-6 in the third quarter, and then they put together this crazy come back and tie the game 27-27 with under a minute left in the game, and then just inexplicably allow Memphis to go down the field almost untouched and kick a game-winning field goal. Memphis was the better team in this game. They deserved to win the football game. If Houston won the game, then, they wouldn't have deserved to win, in my opinion. But just to have it happen like that, to give up like that down at the end, when you have an opportunity to go to overtime on the road against the defending AAC champions, it was so frustrating to watch. Very inconsistent game, I think, from the Houston offense. I thought that the Houston defense played pretty well overall. But again, it's just, because actually you look at those 30 points, 3 of them were on that last drive, obviously, and then there was also a scoop and score. So Houston's defense only allowing 23 points against Memphis, one of the more explosive offenses with elite skill position talent, right? And so Houston's defense played well enough to win, and they didn't win. So I think that, look, you were hoping that 2020 was going to be a good year for Houston, and they didn't lose any bad games. They didn't lose to a bunch of people that they should have beaten necessarily, but you go into this offseason and you finish with a losing record, and this is year 2 under Dana Holgorsen. You had this whole big thing about how you don't fire coaches, or you fire coaches for winning 8 games, right? And now here you are with 2 straight losing records. I think that, obviously I'm not saying that any decision like that should be made on Dana Holgorsen, but I think that it's fair to say at this point, if this is the last game of the season, they've definitely underachieved with the talent that I feel like they've had on campus. But speaking of underachieving, Baylor losing to Oklahoma State 45-3, just terrible, awful. One of the worst performances I've seen by a team in a long while. I can't even think of the last time I've seen a performance this disappointing. Baylor just had nothing. Baylor just had absolutely nothing. They got outgained 608 to 156. They averaged 2.4 yards per play. I mean, that's miserable. That's horrible. Those are the kind of days that you just can't have if you're a team also that's as talented as Baylor is. Charlie Brewer gets hurt somewhere in the 4th quarter. They put Jacob Zeno into the game after, all the clamoring from fans, and he plays pretty well. On one drive, he leads their only scoring drive, a field goal drive. But yeah, I mean, just a complete letdown, just a failure, honestly. And they were without a bunch of players, and actually most of their offensive coaching staff because of COVID, actually, which is, we can get into whether they should have played the game at all, but just a total letdown, I think, from Baylor. And now you head into an offseason where you don't feel good about what you've got going on right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. The only other game is TCU versus Louisiana Tech, which, by the way, is on the TV right over there. It's not over as yet. Right now it's 45-3, and they've already pulled Max Duggan. So I figured there was no need to wait for it to be over, right? I figured that we could just deliver this now. Great performance from their running game. Quentin Johnston, their wide receiver, he has 133 yards and a touchdown at the time I'm recording this. Just a tremendous player. I think he's going to be a big-time problem for opponents the next couple years in this state. But, overall, I think it was a pretty disappointing day of football. And obviously I think that Friday, North Texas UTEP was a good game. But today, I mean, with Rice and Baylor and Houston having the performances that they had, just a really disappointing day. You're really starting to feel like it's December 12th, that this is not the kind of time of year that you're used to these teams playing. And they're playing like they don't expect to be playing almost, like their bodies aren't ready to be playing. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see next week. We've still got some more regular season games left on December 19th. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the season finishes up. But thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter at DCTFCFB. You can like us on Facebook, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. You can find all of our work at TexasFootball.com. Become a subscriber at TexasFootball.com/subscribe. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and I'll talk to you again real soon.